Imagine a night when fatigue weighs more than your body itself. You're in bed, but sleep doesn't come. Your chest tightens, your mind won't quiet, and your tears seem to have a life of their own. You ask yourself, why is this happening to me? Where do I find the strength to keep going? We've all felt that painful silence, that emptiness that burns the soul. And in the midst of that storm, a question appears that changes everything. Am I really alone? My friend, that's where faith enters like a fire that breaks through the darkness. It's not an abstract idea or cheap consolation. It's a force that sustains you when you can no longer sustain yourself. Today I want to talk to you about that faith, about how it not only lifts you up in the toughest moments, but also transforms your mind, your heart, and your entire life. Because believing in God isn't running away from reality. It's learning to face it with courage, knowing that you never walk alone. Think for a moment about a house. At first glance, it may be beautiful, freshly painted walls, sparkling windows, elegant furniture. But tell me, what if that house is built on sand? It only takes the first storm, the first strong wind, for everything that seemed stable to crumble in seconds. That's what happens to us when we try to build our lives on fragile foundations. The opinions of others, money, fame, even our own strength. All of that is sand that slips through our fingers. And when trials come, when the storm rages, those foundations fail. Jesus made it clear in Matthew 7, "A wise man builds his house on rock, and though the rain comes and the wind blows, that house stands firm." My friend, that rock is faith in God. And I'm not talking about a superficial faith, about pretty words spoken when everything is going well, but about the kind of faith that becomes a root, a foundation, a support, when all else fails. I don't know what storm you're facing today. Maybe it's a loss that took your breath away. Maybe it's a betrayal that left your heart shattered. Or maybe it's a silent uncertainty that creeps in every night and robs you of sleep. We all know what it's like to feel like the world is falling apart, like every brick in our life is falling one by one. Have you ever felt that fragility? That moment when you don't know if you can make it through another day? Let me tell you something. Faith is that invisible embrace that holds you in the midst of collapse and whispers to you, "You will not fall. You are not alone." When you lean your life on God, it doesn't mean there won't be storms. Of course, they will come. But it means that when they come, your soul won't be devastated because beneath you is an eternal rock that cannot be broken. Look at Job's life. He lost everything, his wealth, his children, his health. The pain he experienced was so great that his friends didn't even recognize him. And yet, even though there were moments of tears, of questions, of deep suffering, Job didn't let go of his faith. And do you know what happened? That faith became the foundation that sustained him, even when he had nothing else. In the end, God raised him up and gave him back more than what he had lost. Faith isn't denying reality. It isn't pretending it doesn't hurt. Faith is staring pain in the face, feeling the rain hitting your face, but knowing that beneath you is a firm rock that won't move. That certainty changes everything. Because when you know your roots are in God, you no longer live in fear of collapse. You know that the storm can shake, but not destroy. I want you to imagine this, a tree in the middle of a storm. The wind whips it furiously, the rain batters its branches, and it even loses some leaves. From the outside, it looks like it won't hold up, but its roots, deep and firm in the earth, sustain it. That's what faith is like. Maybe your life is being battered right now, but if your root is God, your essence will remain standing. Now think about the opposite, a life built on money, on the approval of others, on appearances. All of that seems solid while the sun shines, but tell me, what happens when the economy fails, when someone rejects you, when your image shatters? The house collapses, the heart becomes empty, because those foundations were never rock, they were sand. And the human soul cannot stand on sand. It needs something eternal. Brother, sister, friend who listens to me, I don't know what your foundation has been until now. Perhaps you've trusted in yourself, in your plans, in your willpower. And perhaps today you're tired because you've discovered that those strengths aren't enough. Perhaps you've relied on others, and those people failed you. Perhaps you've sought stability in achievements, and yet your heart remains restless. Today I want to invite you to look deeper. There is a rock waiting to sustain you, a rock that never breaks. Faith in God. With this faith as your foundation, you don't just survive the storm, you ride it out and emerge stronger. You don't just stand tall, you learn to sing in the rain. because you know you're not sustained by your own resources, but by eternity itself. And when that enters your mind and your heart, something changes inside you. You discover that life is no longer a struggle to avoid falling, but a constant victory in the midst of chaos. And here's the most beautiful thing. When you build on rock, your life also becomes a refuge for others. Just as a sturdy house can provide shelter for those seeking protection during a storm, your faith can inspire, sustain, and strengthen those around you. It's not just your victory, it's the light that's lit to illuminate others in the darkness. Therefore, today I say to you with all my heart, make your faith in God your foundation. Don't put it off until tomorrow. Don't put it off. Every day you live leaning on sand, you expose yourself to a storm that will tear everything away. But if you decide to build on rock, even if the storm comes, your life will endure. With this foundation, you don't just survive, you win. And that victory begins in your mind, in your way of thinking. Because when your foundation is firm, your thoughts are also transformed. Let's now look at how faith changes your mindset of defeat to one of victory. The greatest battle you'll ever face in life isn't out there. It isn't in your circumstances. It isn't even in the people around you. The greatest battle takes place here, in your mind. Because before you lose a war on the field of life, you lose it in the silent terrain of thoughts. Have you ever noticed? A whisper is enough to paralyze you. That inner voice that says, you won't be able to do it. You're not made for this. God has forgotten about you. And without realizing it, even though nothing has changed on the outside, inside you already feel defeated. Paul warns us in Romans 12:2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. This means that true change begins in the mind. If your mind is aligned with defeat, you will live as a defeated person. But if your mind is renewed in faith, you will walk as a victor, even in the midst of the storm. Let's look at Israel in the desert. God had promised them the land of Canaan, but when they arrived at its gates, many were filled with fear. We are like grasshoppers before giants, they said. Do you notice? It wasn't reality, it was perception. The greatest enemy wasn't the giants outside, but the defeated mentality within. That's why they wandered for 40 years without entering the promised land, because a defeated mind cannot embrace God's promises. Now think of David facing Goliath. All the soldiers saw the same thing, a huge, heavily armed, imposing giant, and they all trembled. But David saw him differently. While others said, he's too big to beat, David said, he's too big to fail. What changed? Not the circumstances, but the mindset. David didn't see himself as a weak young man. He saw himself as a son of the living God, backed by the power of heaven. And that mindset made him a victor even before he threw the stone. Brother, sister, defeat begins in the mind, but so does victory. And here's the truth I want you to engrave on your heart. You are a child of God, and in Him you are more than a conqueror. I don't say this, His word says it. So why do you keep listening to the whispers of doubt? Why do you let that dark voice steal your confidence? Imagine this inner dialogue. What if I fail? What if I make a mistake? What if God isn't with me? That's the whisper of the enemy, a snake crawling in your mind to make you forget who you are. But now I want you to close your eyes and declare with fire in your chest, I am a child of God. I am a conqueror. I do not walk alone. I am not abandoned. Repeat it. Say it until your mind aligns with your spirit. Because every time you say it, something inside you ignites. No more doubts, no more fears, no more voices of defeat. Today, a new mindset begins within you, that of victory. This isn't about empty optimism or self-help phrases. It's about remembering who fights beside you. It's about understanding that the God who parted the Red Sea, who tore down the walls of Jericho, who shut the lions' mouths in Daniel's den, is the same one who tells you today, do not fear, I am with you. Do you feel it? It's like a fire igniting in your chest, like a voice that doesn't scream, but that resonates louder than any fear. Trust, my son, because in me you already have victory. Friend, change your mindset and you'll change your life, because defeat can dwell in your mind even when you're surrounded by blessings, and victory can dwell in your mind even when you're in the midst of trials. The difference isn't in what you face, but in how you look at it. And when you look at it from a place of faith, you always see possibilities where others only see giants. This victory begins in the mind, but it has a powerful enemy, fear. The fear that paralyzes, that binds, that steals dreams. And faith not only changes your thinking, it also breaks those chains. So now I ask you, are you ready to free yourself from fear? Fear, that silent shadow that lurks deep within the heart. It doesn't always scream, sometimes it whispers. It doesn't always appear in the form of a visible monster. Often it arrives as a small but insistent thought, you can't, you're not enough, you're going to fail. And without realizing it, we let that whisper become a chain. A cold, icy chain that tightens our chest and paralyzes our steps. How many dreams have been lost due to fear? How many opportunities have we let slip by because our inner voice was stronger than our faith? How many times have you stood on the sidelines watching others walk by while you said to yourself, I'm not ready, I don't dare? The Word of God declares it clearly in 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of self-discipline. That means fear doesn't come from God. Fear isn't your inheritance. Fear isn't your identity. You were created to walk in power, love, and confidence, not to live chained to doubt. Let's look at Peter that morning, in the middle of the Sea of Galilee. The waves were crashing, the wind was roaring, and suddenly they saw Jesus walking on the water. At first, everyone thought he was a ghost, and fear gripped them. But Jesus said to them, "It's me, don't be afraid." Then Peter, with a burst of faith, says, "Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water." Jesus calls him, and Peter begins to walk. Yes, an ordinary man like you and me, defying the impossible, standing on the waves. But then Peter takes his gaze off Jesus and fixes it on the wind, on the roar of the waves. And that's when fear sets in. That fear drowns him faster than any storm. The water swallows him up, his heart races, his faith wavers. And yet, in that moment of despair, Peter cries out, "Lord, save me!" And Jesus immediately reaches out his hand and lifts him up. This story reminds us of a powerful truth. Fear doesn't have the last word. You may feel it, you may stumble, even sink for a moment, but if you cry out to Jesus, his presence breaks the chains. Fear melts like snow in the sun when faith takes action. I want you to imagine it. Your heart is squeezed by that icy chain, but suddenly you feel a warmth, a gentle fire enveloping you. It's his presence. That warmth melts the ice, breaks the iron, and your chest breathes deeply again. Air rushes in, your lungs expand, and you understand that nothing can defeat those who walk hand in hand with God. Friend, how many times have you stopped walking toward your purpose because fear held you back? How many blessings have fallen by the wayside because you listened more to the wind than to the voice of Jesus? Today is the day to break those chains. Not tomorrow, not when I feel ready. Today. Because faith is a step taken in the midst of a storm, not when everything is calm. Declare it with your lips. No more fear, no more chains, no more nights dominated by the whisper of doubt. Fear is not your master. Faith in God conquers it. And when fear melts, something else happens. Anxiety, that inner storm that robs us of sleep, begins to lose its strength. Because where faith dwells, the heart finds peace. Let's now transform that inner storm into a river of calm. Anxiety, that silent whirlwind that seems to awaken just when you most need rest. Perhaps you've heard it before. You lie down, close your eyes, but instead of silence, your mind fills with voices, scenarios, and worries that spin like an impossible-to-stop carousel. Your heart beats fast, your hands get cold, and your breaths become shallow. And even though no one notices it on the outside, inside, you're in the middle of a hurricane. It's like carrying an invisible weight on your chest, a backpack full of stones that you can't let go of. Anxiety steals your sleep, steals your breath, steals your peace. It's an enemy that strikes not with screams, but with incessant thoughts. And each thought is a wave that threatens to pull you down a little deeper. The Word tells us in Philippians 4:6-7, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Look closely. It's not about ignoring worry, but about surrendering it. Anxiety is overcome not when you try to control everything, but when you recognize that you can't control it and place it in the hands of the one who can do everything. Remember that scene. Jesus and his disciples in the boat, the sea raging, the waves lashing violently, the wind roaring like an invisible monster. The disciples, desperate, screamed, ran, trying to keep the boat afloat. And meanwhile, what was Jesus doing? He slept. He slept peacefully in the midst of the storm. Not because the storm wasn't real, but because he knew his father was in control. And when they woke him up, one word was enough: shut up, be quiet. The wind stopped, the sea calmed, and a deep silence filled the air. That's the peace God offers. It's not the absence of problems, it's calm in the midst of chaos. It's not ignoring the storm, it's knowing that the one in your boat has the power to control it. Imagine for a moment closing your eyes and feeling a river of calm flowing through you. A river that never stops, that flows through every corner of your soul. Whisper softly, "I am with you, do not be afraid." While the whirlwind of anxiety roars, that river remains constant, serene, eternal. I've heard testimonies of people who found peace in the midst of loss, like that mother who, after saying goodbye to her son, thought she would never smile again. The nights were endless, the pain unbearable, but amidst her tears, she bent her knees and clung to God. And there, on that cold ground, she felt invisible arms surround her. The circumstances didn't change, but her heart did. The anxiety that oppressed her transformed into peace, a peace that can't be explained, that can't be understood, but that is experienced like a balm that heals from within. That's the promise. God's peace will guard your heart and your thoughts, like an invisible shield that rises around you, protecting you from the arrows of worry, from the constant noise of anxiety. Anxiety doesn't always show up with screams. Sometimes it hides in everyday life. It's that feeling you feel when you wake up, when you open your eyes and instead of peace, an endless list of worries greets you like an avalanche. It's that silent pressure you feel when someone asks you, "Are you okay?" And you answer, "Yeah," even if inside your mind is running a marathon without a finish line. Some people describe it as a knot in the stomach that never loosens. Others say it's like a weight on the chest, as if a huge stone were sitting there, motionless, preventing you from breathing freely. And others, like an echo in the mind, a voice that repeats scenarios of failure over and over again until they seem inevitable. Close your eyes and imagine that scene. You're in a dark room with walls that seem to close in little by little. The air is heavy, anxiety like smoke filling the room. And in that moment, you bend your knees, raise your trembling hands and whisper softly, "God, I can't take it anymore. Everything is here, I give it into your hands." Suddenly a soft light enters through a window you didn't know was there. A cool breeze fills the room, and in your heart, you feel a relief you can't explain. The darkness doesn't disappear immediately, but something inside you changes. Now there's a refuge where you can rest. This is the peace of God, a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, because circumstances change, but He doesn't. This peace can't be explained in words, it's experienced deeply. It's a gift that can't be bought, can't be negotiated. It can only be received. Remember what Jesus said in John 14:27, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you, not as the world gives do I give to you." The world offers a superficial, fragile, temporary peace, a peace that depends on everything being in order, a full bank account, perfect health, and nothing missing. But that peace is shattered in an instant when something goes wrong. God's peace, on the other hand, doesn't depend on all is well outside, but on all is firm within. It is a peace that can exist in a hospital, at a funeral, in the midst of a storm, because it doesn't come from circumstances, it comes from His presence. I've seen people who, while the world around them was crumbling, walked calmly, smiled serenely, and spoke sweetly. And when I asked them, "How can you be so calm?" they responded, "I can't explain it, but I feel like God is here, with me." That is living proof that God's peace surpasses human understanding. Anxiety is like a storm that repeats itself over and over again, the same thoughts, the same images, the same fear of the future. But God invites us to stop this cycle with an act of surrender. Prayer isn't a magic formula, it's an exchange. You lay down your burden and receive peace. You let go of fear and receive trust. You surrender your sleepless night and receive rest. Imagine placing everything that weighs you down on an invisible altar before God. Each worry is like a stone you take from your chest and place there. Your fears for tomorrow, your pain for what you've lost, your doubts that seem to drown you. And in that instant, you hear a gentle voice saying, "Son, daughter, don't carry that anymore. I'll take care of you." And upon hearing those words, something inside you melts. The heart that was clenched like a fist begins to loosen. Your breathing returns to its natural rhythm. And suddenly, where there was once a storm, there is now calm. Maybe everything won't be resolved immediately. Life still has waves, there are still winds. But what changes is what happens inside you. You are no longer a drifting ship. You are now a ship with an anchor, and that anchor is Christ. The world may continue to roar, but within your soul lies a refuge that no one can touch. Herein lies the mystery. God's peace cannot be explained, it must be experienced. It is that whisper amidst the cry of fear, that stillness amidst the trembling. It is like a river that runs through the desert, like a beacon in the midst of darkness. A peace that guards, that protects, that envelops. And when you experience that peace, something else happens. You become resilient. You no longer break easily. Trials that once seemed unbearable become opportunities to grow stronger, because anxiety no longer dictates your life. Now it is the peace you received from above that dictates it. With this peace, you realize that life isn't just about surviving the blows, but about rising stronger with each fall. Because trials don't come to destroy you, but to forge you. And this is where we discover something extraordinary. With faith, you learn to be resilient. There are moments in life when the body and soul seem to give up. These are the moments when your knees tremble, when your heart beats so hard it screams inside, "Enough, I can't take it anymore." Perhaps you've felt it, that tiredness that doesn't go away with sleep, that weight that doesn't lift even when others tell you everything will be okay. Life, with its trials, sometimes pushes us to the limit. And yet, right at that limit, faith ignites a spark that whispers, "Rise up, warrior. This is not your end. This will make you stronger." James 1:2-4 reminds us of something that at first glance seems like a contradiction. My brothers, count it all joy when you face various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. But let perseverance have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Look carefully at what it says. It's not that trials are easy, it's that trials have a purpose. They are God's secret workshop for forging our character. It's like a diamond. Before it shone, it was just coal, subjected to pressure, heat, and time. Nothing beautiful, nothing valuable to the naked eye. But under the force of fire, under extreme pressure, something precious was formed. So it is with you. The trials that seem unbearable today are, in reality, the fire God is using to form something eternal and brilliant in you. Look at Joseph, sold by his own brothers, betrayed by those who should have protected him, chained, humiliated, forgotten in prison. Humanly, it all seemed like a failure. But what others thought was evil, God used for good. Every betrayal brought him closer to his destiny. Every night in prison was a step toward the palace. Joseph didn't give up. And one day, that rejected young man became the man who saved entire nations from famine. Resilience isn't never falling, it's getting up every time you fall, with the certainty that God is still writing your story. It's understanding that trials aren't a wall to hold you back, but a mountain that, when climbed, gives you a broader view. Think about your own life. Perhaps you've faced loss, breakups, failures. Perhaps even now you feel your strength is fading. But listen carefully, that's not a sign that you should give up. It's a sign that you're in the process of being forged, because no one develops resilience in the easy way. Resilience is born in pain, but it blossoms in hope. Resilience doesn't always feel heroic. It's not always a visible act. It's often silent, almost imperceptible. It's getting back up after being knocked down, even when your body and mind are begging you to stop. It's the inner voice that says, "Even if it hurts, even if I feel like I can't, I'll take one more step." That voice is the spark of faith that ignites in the midst of darkness. Imagine for a moment a warrior exhausted after a drawn-out battle. His hands bleed, his feet are muddy, his armor is broken, and yet, with each heavy breath, he picks himself up and moves forward. Not because the path is easy, but because he knows there is something greater than himself sustaining him. This is your faith in action. Resilience manifests when you refuse to give up, even when the world seems to tell you otherwise. And there's something wonderful in recognizing that trials aren't punishments, but opportunities in disguise. Every challenge has a purpose: to teach you patience, to shape your character, to strengthen your heart. No matter how dark the night, each dawn comes with renewed strength. It's God's way of reminding us that we are stronger than we think, that our capacity to endure lies beyond what we see. Remember the stories around us, ordinary people facing extraordinary situations. A single mother who, amid the loss of her job and her son's illness, finds the strength to get up each day in prayer and faith. A young man who lost everything but decides to study, work, and not let hopelessness determine his future. Each one of them, like you, is building resilience in the midst of their battle. The diamond metaphor is powerful again here. The fire is intense, the pressure constant, and the coal may seem useless. But whoever remains steadfast, whoever doesn't give up, is transformed into something precious. This is how faith works. What seemed broken, what seemed lost, turns into strength, experience, wisdom. Every tear shed, every night of anguish, every moment of weariness becomes another brick in the construction of a resilient spirit. And resilience isn't just about enduring, it's about learning. Every fall brings with it a lesson. Every mistake is a silent teacher. Every challenge, however painful, is an opportunity to grow, to mature, to understand the depth of the strength that dwells within you. Because when faith sustains you, nothing can take away what God has planted within you. Sometimes the world will mistake your strength for stubbornness, your patience for weakness, your perseverance for obstinacy. But authentic resilience doesn't seek human approval. It doesn't depend on others understanding your struggle. Its essence lies in a deep connection with God, in the certainty that He is by your side, even when no one else is. Think of that moment when all seems lost. Tears flow, shoulders feel heavy, and your heart beats with a seemingly endless exhaustion. Maybe you've been there. Sleepless nights wondering how to move forward, thinking your strength has vanished. That feeling of "I can't take it anymore" is human, and acknowledging it isn't weakness but honesty. But resilience is born precisely there, in the midst of exhaustion. It's not something that emerges when everything is calm, but when you decide to rise despite the pain. It's the faith that ignites an inner fire and says, "No matter what happens, no matter what I feel, I will get up." That fire transforms fatigue into strength, sadness into courage, momentary defeat into learning. Remember Joseph in Egypt, sold by his brothers, betrayed and forgotten in prison. Every blow he received could have broken him forever, but his faith wouldn't let that happen. He persisted, worked with integrity, trusted God, and ultimately rose to fulfill a purpose greater than himself. Resilience not only allowed him to survive, but to thrive. He understood that every trial was a stepping stone toward his destiny. Now think about your own life. Every fall, every disappointment, every door that closed in front of you, all of these can be the building blocks of your character. Resilience is seeing trials not as obstacles, but as opportunities to grow, to learn, to strengthen your spirit. Every tear shed, every moment of fear or doubt is a building block that builds your soul to endure more, love more, and give more. The diamond metaphor has never been clearer. Under pressure, under fire, common coal transforms into a precious jewel. That's what we are like when we remain steadfast in faith. What seemed broken becomes strong, what seemed insignificant becomes valuable, and what seemed finite becomes eternal in its purpose. And there's something else. Resilience doesn't depend on external approval. It doesn't need someone to see your effort, understand your struggle, or acknowledge your pain. True resilience is silent, patient, steadfast. It's the certainty that God is with you, even when everything around you says otherwise. It's waking up every day with your eyes on Him, with the certainty that you won't walk alone, that you will every step, even if painful, brings you closer to something bigger. Today, my friend, even though your knees may tremble and your heart may cry out, "Enough." Component placement. There is a spark within you that will not go out. That spark is faith. That spark is the promise that trials are not meant to destroy you, but to shape you, to teach you, to make you rise stronger. And every day you choose to rise, even when the world seems dark, you are building within yourself a strength that nothing and no one can defeat. With this resilience, every decision you make stops being born of fear or impulse and begins to be born of the clarity that God gives to those who trust in Him. Strong in trials, your heart learns to decide wisely, not hastily, with faith, not fear. Thus we prepare for the next stage, decisions guided by faith, not by emotions. I want to invite you to do something simple but powerful. Leave a comment with just one word: faith. Every day we face decisions. Some are small and go almost unnoticed. What to say in a stressful moment, how to respond to a hurtful word, how to react to an unexpected opportunity. Others are huge, choosing a career path, deciding on a marriage, accepting a radical life change. And amidst all these decisions, the human tendency is to react from emotions: fear, anger, frustration, anxiety. But decisions made on emotional impulse rarely lead to peace. They're hasty decisions with a knot in your stomach and a heavy heart that often end in regret. Perhaps you've experienced it, saying something impulsively and then wishing you hadn't, making a financial decision out of fear and discovering it led you down the wrong path, reacting angrily and then carrying the consequences for years. Proverbs 3:5-6 offers us clear guidance. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Wisdom is not just knowledge, it's spiritual discernment. It's learning to look beyond the immediate, to consider the eternity of your decisions, to open the eyes of your soul and allow God to direct your steps. Let's look at Moses. Faced with the oppression of his people, faced with Pharaoh's injustice, he could have reacted with anger and made impulsive decisions that put him in danger. Instead, he waited, listened, and sought God's direction. Every decision, even in difficult times, was guided by faith, not emotion. That clarity allowed him to lead millions to freedom. David also shows us this truth. Pursued by Saul, fearing for his life, with enemies close at hand and constant opportunities for revenge, David did not give in to the impulse of anger or fear. He waited on God, trusting that his timing was perfect. He did not act rashly, and thanks to that patience and trust, he became a king after God's own heart. Faith transforms the way we make decisions. It gives you clear eyes to see the truth beyond emotion. It gives you a serene heart to choose with eternal love, not with a momentary impulse. It teaches you that not everything that glitters is right, that what is urgent is not always wise, and that patience in waiting often opens doors that impulse would never reach. Imagine for a moment that you're facing a difficult decision. Your mind is filled with doubts, your heart is beating fast, and you feel that knot in your throat that compels you to act quickly. Take a deep breath. Remember that faith isn't passivity but discernment. It isn't fear of acting, but wisdom to wait and trust. Each step, guided by God, not only prevents mistakes, but also builds a solid, firm, and purposeful path. Often our decisions are influenced by haste, fear, or frustration. That knot in our stomach when we feel like something must be done now, that urgency that pushes us to act before thinking, is the voice of emotional impulse. And when we follow that voice, we often end up regretting what we did or what we didn't do. But faith offers us a different path. Faith teaches us that we are not alone in our choices, that there is an invisible guide who sees the bigger picture beyond what our limited eyes can perceive, that our decisions can be made from a place of clarity, serenity, and confidence rather than anxiety, anger, or fear. I would like you to take a moment and write in the comments. What word describes your greatest fear, and how are you facing it with faith? Imagine you're standing at a fork in the road. On your left, an option that seems safe, quick, and tempting, but your inner intuition knows it could lead to complications. On your right, a less obvious path, more difficult to navigate, requiring patience and trust. The emotional impulse screams, "Take the easy way, do it now." Faith, on the other hand, whispers, "Take the easy way, do it now. Wait, watch, listen, I am with you and my way is better than any shortcut." When you choose from faith, it doesn't mean you'll never fail. It doesn't mean everything will be perfect. It means your heart and mind are aligned with the truth. Your steps are anchored in something bigger than yourself. And even if you stumble, you're not lost. Every decision becomes an act of obedience and trust rather than a blind leap guided by fear or pressure. Let's look at another example, David facing Goliath. Many would have reacted with fear, impulsively, assessing only the immediate danger. But David, with faith, sees beyond the giant. His heart doesn't give in to intimidation. His emotions don't dictate his actions. He trusts in God and acts with the certainty that he is not alone, and that certainty transforms his courage into victory. And this is vital in our daily lives, from relationship decisions to career, financial, or family choices. When we learn to act with faith, we free ourselves from frequent regret, from the burden of "what if I did wrong?" and begin to live with inner peace. Faith gives us clear eyes to discern what is right, a serene heart to choose with love, and patience to wait for God's perfect timing. Even in mistakes, faith allows us to learn without despair. A decision made with faith, even if it doesn't have the expected outcome, doesn't break our spirit, because we understand that God can redeem any path, correct any step, and use even what seemed like a mistake for a greater good. Faith teaches us to see life as a whole, not just as an emotional moment. Think about your own life. How many times have you acted impulsively and ended up with regret? How many times have you let anxiety or anger decide for you? Faith doesn't eliminate emotions, but it puts them in their place. emotions cease to be masters, and you become a conscious navigator, guided by divine wisdom. Ultimately, understanding this changes everything. Faith gives you the ability to pause before acting rashly, to look beyond the immediate and consider the eternal. You are no longer at the mercy of your emotions or the impulse of the moment. Your heart learns to respond clearly, your mind learns to discern wisely, and your steps align with God's purpose. That knot in your stomach you once felt when making a hasty decision is now replaced by a steady calm. That anxiety about getting it right turns into serene confidence. You know you are being guided, and that every choice made from faith strengthens your spirit. Even mistakes cease to be defeats, because God can redeem any path and use it for a greater good. Every decision guided by faith prepares you for the next stage of your life. You learn to wait, to trust in His perfect timing, to value patience as a gift and not a burden. Every step you take in faith is a step toward freedom, clarity, and inner peace. Comment, share, and connect with others seeking strength. Your testimony can inspire someone to overcome their fears and trust in God. Today, if you face difficult decisions, remember this. Breathe, pray, listen, and trust. Don't let emotion dictate your path. Allow faith to guide you. Because when you decide with faith, you not only make the right choice, but you also build a strong heart, capable of facing whatever comes, firm in God's love and the clarity of His purpose. With wise decisions, you don't just avoid mistakes, you learn to wait. Because God's timing isn't a delay, it's a gift wrapped in patience, and every moment of waiting is a preparation for what He has in store for you. Waiting hurts. And I'm not talking about those small, everyday waits, but the ones that seem endless, that weigh on the heart like an unmovable stone. You wait for a change, an answer, a sign, and time seems to stand still. Every day that passes without seeing results is like an open wound, bleeding hope and fueling frustration. Maybe you've been there, longing for a job, love, a miracle, a reconciliation, looking up at the sky and asking, "Why are you taking so long, Lord?" Impatience sets in, thoughts pile up, and the heart begins to waver. It's hard to trust when reality seems to contradict the promise. But God's timing is not a void or a punishment. It is a silent workshop of preparation. Every moment of waiting is filled with teaching, maturity, and transformation that can only occur as we remain attentive, trusting, and faithful. It is in this patience that our character is formed, our faith is strengthened, and we learn to depend completely on Him. Ecclesiastes 3:1 reminds us, "Everything has its season, and a time for every purpose under the heaven." Nature itself teaches us this truth. A tree does not bear fruit before it ripens. A seed does not blossom before it germinates. A river does not reach the sea before it has flowed its course. So too do our lives. There is a perfect time for every purpose, and waiting doesn't mean losing, but rather preparing. Abraham is a powerful example. He waited years for the promise of a son, years where doubt could have defeated him, where impatience could have led him to act on his own understanding. But Abraham waited, trusted, and stood firm. And when God's time came, the joy was immense, like a river overflowing after a drought, like a sun breaking through the clouds after a storm. Waiting has a language of its own. It speaks of maturity, of humility, of silent strength. It teaches us that not everything is under our control, that some things only God can orchestrate, and that our task is to walk with confidence, not haste. Every day you choose to trust in Him, even when it hurts, is a day your soul grows, strengthens, and prepares to receive what He has in store. Imagine the joy that blossoms after years of waiting. That feeling is incomparable. Tears turning into laughter, anxiety turning into peace, emptiness filling with purpose. Every moment of patience opens space for grace, for the miracle, for the fulfillment of what God promised long before you could even imagine it. Ultimately, patience ceases to be merely waiting and becomes trusting with the heart. It is not resignation, nor inaction, nor fear of moving forward. It is the certainty that every moment of waiting has a purpose, that every day of tension prepares for something greater, that every moment of uncertainty is an opportunity to grow and draw closer to God. That seemingly endless wait transforms into a river of learning. Every tear, every sigh, every moment of doubt is like the water that nourishes the seed before it blossoms. And when God's time arrives, joy is not only the reward, but the confirmation that He was present every second, holding you, guiding you, shaping you. Are you willing to trust even when it hurts? to hold your heart when impatience screams, when the world seems to be moving too fast or too slow. Faith teaches us that trusting doesn't mean seeing everything resolved, but rather believing that God is in control, even when we don't understand the path. And that patience brings liberation from anxiety, from frustration, from the need to control what only God can direct. In waiting, your soul finds rest, your spirit is strengthened, and you discover that your true identity depends not on what happens, but on who sustains you. A faithful God who keeps his promises in his perfect timing. With each moment of patience cultivated, you come closer to your purpose, closer to the peace that transcends understanding, closer to the fullness of what God intends for you. Because waiting is no longer a burden, but a gift, a time to grow, to trust, to prepare for the abundance to come. In that waiting, you find your true identity. Not the identity others give you, nor the one the world tries to impose, but the one God has planted in you. Freed from the chains of others, strengthened by patience and faith, your heart is ready to discover who you really are in Him. Often our identity seems to depend on what others think of us. Criticism, comments, judgments, and other people's expectations become invisible chains that bind our hearts. That pang in the soul caused by a hurtful word, that feeling of emptiness when we feel we don't fit in, can mark our days and obscure our perception of who we really are. But the most liberating truth is found in God, not in human applause, not in the approval of others, but in His loving and eternal gaze. Galatians 1:10 reminds us, "Am I now seeking the favor of men or of God? Am I trying to please men? If I were still trying to please men, I would not be a servant of Christ." True identity is not built on the world's opinion, but on the truth of who we are in Him. Imagine Jesus standing before the crowd, before the Pharisees, before those who criticized Him, pointed fingers at Him, and misunderstood Him. Every word He spoke, every action He performed, was anchored in His divine identity, not in human validation. No one could define Him, no one could limit Him, because His identity was firmly rooted in God. And so it is with you. When you begin to see yourself as God sees you, something changes inside you. The need for external approval loses its hold. The insecurity that once paralyzed you fades away. You feel an inner fire, a rebirth of confidence that doesn't depend on what others say or think. "I am loved, I am enough, I am valuable," becomes your declaration, your daily truth. Every criticism, every rejection, every moment you feel misunderstood becomes a reminder that your worth doesn't depend on the gaze of others. That freedom allows you to soar, act with courage, and walk with firm steps, because you know your identity is sealed in eternity. Society pushes you to fit in, to seek acceptance, to measure your success by standards that aren't yours. But God calls you to a unique personal identity, unaffected by the opinions of others. Recognizing this is liberating. You can be authentic, true to your essence, strong in your purpose, without fear of disapproval. And the freedom to live from this identity impacts everything: your relationships, your decisions, your way of facing challenges. When you don't depend on human validation, you act with courage, clarity, and faith. Your heart ceases to be vulnerable to emotional manipulation and becomes a safe haven, anchored in God's unconditional love. Finally, understanding who you are in God transforms everything. Every criticism that once hurt, every comment that made you doubt your worth, now becomes a distant whisper, unable to define you. Your identity is no longer tied to human applause or rejection, but to the eternal truth: you are loved, you are enough, you are valuable. That emptiness you felt for not fitting in, that feeling of not being accepted, is filled with an invisible but real embrace, that of God. You feel your heart lift, your spirit free, and a deep peace replace any insecurity. The freedom that comes from recognizing your divine identity gives you wings to live with authenticity and purpose. Being free from the opinions of others doesn't mean you ignore their words, but rather that you cease to be a slave to them. Every decision you make, every action you take, becomes a reflection of who you truly are in Him, not who others expect you to be. That clarity allows you to walk with confidence, act with integrity, and face challenges without fear. When you affirm your identity in God, nothing and no one can steal your worth. Not even the cruelest criticism, the most unfair comparison, or the pressure to fit into human molds. You become someone who stands up, who makes firm decisions, who faces life with a strong and free heart. Today, if you've ever felt like you weren't enough, that you didn't fit in, that your voice didn't matter, remember this: Your worth doesn't depend on the eyes of the world, but on the loving gaze of God. Recognizing this is liberating. It's the first step to being truly courageous, to facing your fears and challenges with a burning heart, with the certainty that your strength comes not from within you, but from the one who called you by name and created you with a unique purpose. Free, you become courageous. With your identity firmly in God, you face what you fear, take action with faith, and your heart beats strongly, ready for the next stage, courage to face your fears. Fear is a silent enemy. Sometimes it appears as a barely perceptible shadow, other times as a giant that seems to block every step. It whispers doubts to us, paralyzes us, and convinces us to remain safe. And the worst thing about fear is that it doesn't always come from something external. It often originates within us, in thoughts that repeat, "You can't, it's not for you, it will be too difficult." But courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward in spite of it. It is taking a firm step when everything inside you screams to retreat. It is facing uncertainty with a heart burning with faith. Joshua 1:9 reminds us, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or dismayed, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." True courage is born from the profound knowledge that we are not alone, that God goes before us, guiding every step. It's like a diamond. Before it shone, it was just coal, subjected to pressure, heat, and time. Nothing beautiful, nothing valuable to the naked eye. But under the force of fire, under extreme pressure, something precious was formed. So it is with you. The trials that seem unbearable today are, in reality, the fire God is using to form something eternal and brilliant in you. Look at Joseph, sold by his own brothers, betrayed by those who should have protected him, chained, humiliated, forgotten in prison. Humanly, it all seemed like a failure. But what others thought was evil, God used for good. Every betrayal brought him closer to his destiny. Every night in prison was a step toward the palace. Joseph didn't give up, and one day that rejected young man became the man who saved entire nations from famine. Resilience isn't never falling, it's getting up every time you fall, with the certainty that God is still writing your story. It's understanding that trials aren't a wall to hold you back, but a mountain that, when climbed, gives you a broader view. Think about your own life. Perhaps you've faced loss, breakups, failures. Perhaps even now you feel your strength is fading. But listen carefully. That's not a sign that you should give up. It's a sign that you're in the process of being forged. Because no one develops resilience in the easy way. Resilience is born in pain, but it blossoms in hope. Resilience doesn't always feel heroic. It's not always a visible act. It's often silent, almost imperceptible. It's getting back up after being knocked down, even when your body and mind are begging you to stop. It's the inner voice that says, "Even if it hurts, even if I feel like I can't, I'll take one more step." That voice is the spark of faith that ignites in the midst of darkness. Imagine for a moment a warrior exhausted after a drawn-out battle. His hands bleed, his feet are muddy, his armor is broken, and yet, with each heavy breath, he picks himself up and moves forward. Not because the path is easy, but because he knows there is something greater than himself sustaining him. This is your faith in action. Resilience manifests when you refuse to give up, even when the world seems to tell you otherwise. And there's something wonderful in recognizing that trials aren't punishments, but opportunities in disguise. Every challenge has a purpose, to teach you patience, to shape your character, to strengthen your heart. No matter how dark the night, each dawn comes with renewed strength. It's God's way of reminding us that we are stronger than we think, that our capacity to endure lies beyond what we see. Remember the stories around us, ordinary people facing extraordinary situations. A single mother who, amid the loss of her job and her son's illness, finds the strength to get up each day in prayer and faith. A young man who lost everything but decides to study, work, and not let hopelessness determine his future. Each one of them, like you, is building resilience in the midst of their battle. The diamond metaphor is powerful again here. The fire is intense, the pressure constant, and the coal may seem useless. But whoever remains steadfast, whoever doesn't give up, is transformed into something precious. This is how faith works. What seemed broken, what seemed lost, turns into strength, experience, wisdom. Every tear shed, every night of anguish, every moment of weariness becomes another brick in the construction of a resilient spirit. And resilience isn't just about enduring, it's about learning. Every fall brings with it a lesson. Every mistake is a silent teacher. Every challenge, however painful, is an opportunity to grow, to mature, to understand the depth of the strength that dwells within you. Because when faith sustains you, nothing can take away what God has planted within you. Sometimes the world will mistake your strength for stubbornness, your patience for weakness, your perseverance for obstinacy. But authentic resilience doesn't seek human approval. It doesn't depend on others understanding your struggle. Its essence lies in a deep connection with God, in the certainty that He is by your side, even when no one else is. Think of that moment when all seems lost. Tears flow, shoulders feel heavy, and your heart beats with a seemingly endless exhaustion. Maybe you've been there. Sleepless nights wondering how to move forward, thinking your strength has vanished. That feeling of "I can't take it anymore" is human, and acknowledging it isn't weakness but honesty. But resilience is born precisely there, in the midst of exhaustion. It's not something that emerges when everything is calm, but when you decide to rise despite the pain. It's the faith that ignites an inner fire and says, "No matter what happens, no matter what I feel, I will get up." That fire transforms fatigue into strength, sadness into courage, momentary defeat into learning. Imagine for a moment that you're facing a challenge you've always avoided. Perhaps it's a difficult conversation, a major life change, or a situation that provokes anxiety. Your pulse quickens, your hands tremble, and fear tries to take hold. However, something stronger emerges from within. The faith that reminds you of who you are, the certainty that you're not alone, and the determination to move forward with courage. David facing Goliath is a clear example. A seemingly small young man faced a giant who intimidated an entire army. He didn't allow himself to be paralyzed by fear or the opinions of others. With faith in God and courage in his heart, he faced the impossible and triumphed. This story teaches us that courage doesn't depend on physical strength or the absence of fear, but on trusting that God is with you and acting from that trust. Courage is practiced every day, not just in great deeds. Every moment you decide to speak, decide, act, or stand up for what's right, even when you're afraid, is an act of courage. Every step you take with faith, however small, is a victory over doubt, insecurity, and fear. And courage is also contagious. When you move forward, others see that it's possible to overcome their own fears. Every courageous action, guided by faith, leaves a mark on the world, inspiring and strengthening those around you. Your heart, ignited by faith, becomes a beacon that lights the way, showing that fear is not the end but a challenge that can be overcome. Ultimately, courage isn't a fleeting moment of bravery, but a daily decision to stand up, move forward, and face what you fear, even when your heart is pounding and your hands are shaking. That courage is born of faith, of knowing that you are not alone, that God walks with you, and that His strength is greater than any fear you may feel. Think of all the times fear stopped you. Missed opportunities, dreams put on hold, decisions left unmade. Each of those moments could have been different if you had taken a step of faith. Today, by recognizing that your courage and strength depend not on yourself, but on the one who created you, you find the power to act, to move forward, and to conquer what seemed impossible. Like David facing Goliath, you can look fear in the eye and declare, "I will not fear, for God is with me." Every small step of courage builds confidence, every bold action strengthens your spirit, and every challenge faced with faith transforms you from the inside out. And that courage not only affects you, but also illuminates those around you. When you act from faith and courage, you inspire, motivate, and demonstrate that the limits we think we have are only shadows compared to God's light. Your life becomes a living testimony that fear does not have the last word. Today, if you find yourself facing your own giants, remember, fear is not the end. It's only a call to act with courage. With your heart aflame with faith, every challenge becomes an opportunity, every fear becomes a lesson, and every step you take, however small, is a triumph over doubt and insecurity. Courageous, you find peace amidst chaos, like a beacon that lights up the storm. Faith allows you to remain calm and confident even when everything around you seems to be falling apart. If this message spoke to you, leave a comment telling me what part of it touched you the most. And don't forget to subscribe. Activate the bell and share it with someone who needs to hear that their courage and strength are in God.